Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of I Can't Remember Shit. I'm your host, Evan Barton, and this is a memory podcast where me and a lovely guest are attempting a thoughtful descent, a peaceful reminisce, and an honest recollection of our own memories. I'm really excited today to welcome Drew Sikora to the podcast. Drew, what's up?
Same as you've ever seen me, I promise.
I think that is true. We did debrief prior to starting recording that life's pretty the same for you right now.
Has been for 4 years. This is like all the memories are going to ask, well, maybe not, are going to be from this period. So
the past 4 years.
Yeah, well, it's like nothing has changed. So at least that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you. Well, I've debriefed you a little bit on what we're going to be talking about, or just how the show structure goes in general. But when I ask you about memory, or you think about memory, what do you typically think about?
I mean, I go to childhood immediately for sure. So, like quick Rorschach test. I go to like grandma's cookies, snickerdoodles she always made. And some sort of like overall feeling of being in a family, you know? After I lost my grandparents, all that went away. That was really fast.
As soon as the microphone gets on you and a camera, you go into to memories of your dead relatives, which is crazy. No, I'm joking. It's very valid. It's very valid. I do think memories can be a heavy topic for some. They can be light. Some people have good memories. Some people have bad memories.
I think it's embarrassing to me. That's
what do you mean?
Well, I am both frazzled about my memories and that like I'm just so afraid I won't be able to remember anything this entire hour. So that's about it.
Well, the title of the podcast is I Can't Remember Shit. So you
remember that.
That's kind of why I picked you, is because I know you struggled with memory.
We've had enough conversations that trailed off at parties.
Yes. Memories can be pretty tough for most people. I'm allowing you the space to be raw and real, but also wanting to remind you that you don't have to be if you're not looking to be. I do think that the topic we're going to be talking about is going to be mostly lighthearted, so it's up to you on how deep you want to go.
Okay, approximately. Never mind.
No, you're good. You're good. And we do have beers. That also makes it lighthearted.
So yeah,
most of the time when we're hanging out, we have a few brewskis. So I felt it apropos to do this.
Cheers, then. Cheers.
Look at that. This is my first cheers on a podcast. I love that.
Your regular Joe Rogan.
Exactly. We're really mimicking Joe Rogan with this one. All right, we're gonna go first into our segment number one. That I kind of like to call Let Us Reminisce. And so we're going to first do our first memories of each other, and I'm going to have you go first. I'd love for you to kind of share what your first memory of me is, and I will obviously indulge you with that as well.
Okay, well, I don't remember exactly the first time I saw you, but I saw you around so much, like for at least a year or two before we started talking. And you were the type of person who, when I would just see you out with people, I'd go up to a friend and be like, do you know who that is? And a lot of people did. They knew you were Evan. But they weren't really able to give me much information until, we didn't talk until we met at St. Vitus one time. And I was... I'd like to say...
Which you remember and I don't, which is really funny.
Which is great, because it's really close. It's barely remembered, but...
Yeah, but this was we're already like within 1 year, because you and I met like more intimately within this year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think it was just about a year ago, and my main recollection is that I like ran away, because I was like, oh, this is someone I've wanted to talk to for so long. I have to get out of here
Yeah.
and smoke a cigarette on like the porch or whatever the hell you call it with my friends.
That's exactly what I do there too. So we probably ran into each other again right after that.
Yeah,
After you ran and I ran to go do that too.
I know I was looking for a friend at some point and I came up to you and I was like, this is a good opportunity. I was like, where's blank? You know? And you didn't know, which I knew you wouldn't know. And I was just like,
it was a good opener though.
An opener that I immediately was like, all right, good to see you. Bye. I'll find him now.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, when we first like formally sat down and like I think went on like a proper date, if you will, we debated on
if you will
on this. if you will, and I will, but if you will.
We agreed to go out.
Exactly. Casually, demurely. On a day at the same place. Mm-hmm. Yes. But yeah, we kind of debated on how that night occurred, which was really funny because I remember that night specifically. I think you were looking at me and I was looking at one of your friends.
Do you remember which one it is?
Oh, yeah, of course. We've talked about this.
Okay, of course we've talked about it. So we are really every time you access a memory, it's changed. I know that I've read that somewhere. Yes. At least I need to have a
memorologist on here to like really talk about that. But
but yes, I wish I still talked to him.
I wish he lived here in Tulsa. He would so be besties with the crew. Miss him.
I think so too. But that's what I remember about the day we first met. Mm-hmm. As for like how that moved forward, was it that we matched on Hinge? How did we actually start? That was it.
I mean, that's where like my full memory like picks up because you remember this encounter at St. Vitus. I remember swiping right on you on Hinge, or not on Hinge, it was on Tinder, immediately messaging you, and then you didn't respond for like months. And then you never did until this, I threw a pool party earlier this year at my own parents' house, and we have a mutual friend, Dr. Samuel Kurtz, love Samuel Notebook. And he like sent out a blast to every one of his friends about like a party going on in South Tulsa, a pool party. And it was really funny. I was like, okay, well, Sam's going to invite like, maybe like 5 or 10 people to come chill. And like 20 people show up at my house on a Saturday. And you were one of the people that showed up. And I was like, I went out of my way to like say hi to you because you were at my house, and I wanted to make sure that people were feeling like they were welcome or like knew where things were if anything were to go, whatever, it's a party. And so I like said, hey, Drew, like, how's it going? And then I complimented your tattoo. And then you remember this?
I remember the tattoo compliment very well.
That was my opening line.
Probably all the nanoseconds.
Yes. And then I think after that day, we didn't necessarily like talk a whole lot that day, but you did respond to my Tinder message after that party. And that's what led to us going to Saturn Room for a date.
I am like so in between cringing and impressed with myself. Like that's a pretty reasonable. I need to be more willing to slide into people's DMs.
Yeah,
that's like,
or just like respond to their message.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea too.
Oh, that's funny. Well, this is actually a fantastic segue into what we're going to be talking about on this episode. Are you excited to hear what topic I'm going to broach you with?
I've been racking my brain.
Okay.
How I can embarrass myself.
Any guesses so far?
Well, to be honest, audience, it was told to me that it was a vaguely happy, it was not a negative connotation. So, no, I have no ideas.
Okay, I love it. Well, all right, so now we're going to jump into the topic, and I like to think about the topic as like we're going to jump into our memory banks to try and remember what these moments are about this topic, but I'm excited to tell you what the topic is, and it is dating apps.
Oh, okay, great.
So we're going to go through our favorite and our least favorite memories related to dating apps. One, because in some way it is the connection that brought us together and to what we are now in some way. So I thought that would be a fun topic for us to discuss.
I am so I have a really good one to go for it. Like definitely my favorite dating app experience. If we could start with
Go
that.
ahead. Yeah, your first and your favorite.
So I was talking to this girl who is possibly a 7 days on, 7 days off truck dispatcher. Like runs the phones and stuff for the truck depots. And I got a kidney stone during our talking phase. And I had to go to the hospital, and because I wanted, they thought I was a drug seeker, but I just wanted, please give me your anti-inflammatories. Anyways, I was in the middle of a breakup. My ex at the time we were a mix of cordial and not cordial, and she would not come to the emergency room and give me comfort. So I was just like, I am at an emergency room.
to anyone on the dating apps.
Alone. And this girl,
you're hosting in the emergency room.
And she came and she hung out with me and she held my hand the entire time. And if that wasn't enough, she came back with me when we went to the room. And I was told that I had my colon was blocked. And so I needed an enema. Even if I didn't need one, why not?
Yeah.
Very interesting. And she held my hand during the enema.
Wow.
Yeah, a complete stranger. First time meeting in person.
That's insane.
She was really sweet. Yeah.
And this was here in Tulsa?
In Tulsa at St. Francis. I was St. Francis.
Okay.
Just don't go there for your ER needs.
It's the only place they'll take you. Literally, the EMSA only takes people to St. Francis.
Oh. Don't need an ambulance in Tulsa.
Exactly.
Drive yourself.
I hate to inform you of that. That's crazy.
Oh, that's awful.
Okay, so I have to probe some more questions. One, so I can also think of my memory, but two, so because I'm curious. So you were blocked up both ways. You had kidney stones and you had a colon blockage?
That's true. Yeah, well, I didn't use the bathroom number 2 in 6 days. And
wow.
Yeah, they gave me an x-ray and stuff. And they're like, well, we don't technically know if you need it, but we'll go ahead and do it since that sounds bad.
Yeah, it sounds bad. What app was this on?
Oh, good question. I think this was Hinge. Hinge is great. I think it's my favorite just because, especially as a guy, you can start with words, which best foot forward.
What do you mean words? Like the prompts that they give you or
well, I guess that's a two-sided thing. No, it's I can actually message someone. Come to think of it, I don't know if I've had many meaningful dates with people who were the person that swiped on me first on Hinge.
So you most of the time meet with people on Hinge by you swiping on them and then it becomes a match?
Right, and being funny with my comment. That's
okay, yeah, you're liking people basically on Hinge and being funny, witty, Drew. Mm-hmm. You're spitting some true Drew facts in their Hinge DMs.
To quote Mel Brooks, the Drewish are a proud people.
Okay. I mean, it's that's so interesting. Yeah, Hinge is a new one for me. Dating app wise, I just downloaded Hinge this year, and I feel like Hinge is the place where I will probably comfortably explore my pansexuality. I have other apps where I don't feel like the vibe is right for being, I guess not what's the word I'm looking for? Not being gay or straight, I don't think that I can comfortably or even confidently present as not gay on something like Grindr or Sniffies or whatever, because like most of the time the people I'm presenting to are other men.
Yeah.
So I'm presenting as a gay man, basically.
Right.
I don't tell people, I don't lead with like, oh, I'm pansexual. And in fact, you don't even have to lead with anything other than your parts on those two apps. But the other thing that I was thinking about when it comes to like the dating apps, like Hinge specifically, I guess, is the one where I feel like you actually get to digest who the person is and kind of what they want to put out there more. It's kind of like you can do the prompts where you like are responding to a question with your voice, and you can like sequence out like 1, 2, and 3 of like, oh, I like this, like 3 things that make a Saturday great or something like that is one of the prompts. And you can also like caption your photos instead of it just being a photo. Like they're all pre-made captions, but it's like, this is my best trust moment or whatever.
You felt cute, might delete later.
Exactly. And I think that like does create a more holistic dating profile where you can consider the human as a human instead of just like either a body or like a specific gender, if that makes sense. And so that's where I hope to, and I kind of already have like explore a little bit more of my pansexuality, but haven't had any luck yet.
I have noticed that even as I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here, a more straight presenting person on Hinge
than me,
I've found that it's basically the only place where I match with women. I've only tried really Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, but
never tried Bumble for
Hinge
me.
is like, well, Bumble just changed their policy too, so they're like, I'm pretty sure it's not exactly the same situation as it used to be before. But anyways, like, yeah, women only ever like me on Hinge, and I'm not totally sure why, but I think it's because the hottest thing about me is like quips and like being funny. Or maybe it's that like I can do some sort of, I'm also pansexual. There was a woman that messaged me. She asked me what pansexual was. I answered it and she said thank you. So I really think she unmatched me is the point.
I was like, yeah,
like,
then blocked immediately.
Like I think that was the point, not that like she was disgusted by it. She just didn't know what it was. And it's like, sure, I'm Google. I'm like,
I love when our dating profiles are treated as like a inquisition form, like, you know, oh, I don't know what this is. Let me just ask this random person who I don't know, don't even know their name most of the time. I'm referencing like specifically Grindr and Sniffies sometimes, where people will ask you questions that are on your fucking profile. That shit always pisses me off. I'm like, specifically on Sniffies and Grindr, people are like, are you a bottom? And I'm like, it literally says on my profile what my position is or whatever, what my preferred position is. I'm like, read. Please read.
These and you know, the guys on Grindr, based on the messages that I've gotten from them, are like, I'm not going to go as far as saying cavemen, but
that's what I'm elitist on Grindr.
They're like, yeah, you know what? They're just like meat, you know?
Exactly.
And that's the only thing they got. And they're not even reading. I'm not even sure they can.
No,
so.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really silly.
But like also, I've never had people open up with such vulgar things.
Oh my gosh.
I love me some vulgar. I even like openings that are a bit out there, you know, a bit spicy. But dude, you can't just say like,
I've had some bad ones. I wish that I could pull some up. I've showed my sister's over here in the booth nodding her head, and I've showed her a bunch of horrible messages that I get. My favorite one recently, and we've been joking about this one a lot, is are you taking loads? People will literally open with that message, are you taking loads? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
You should be like, loads of what?
Loads of fun? Yeah, I want some loads of fun, which still is
the bottom for fun.
It means the same thing, but they're just like very explicit with it. Okay, I have come up with my favorite in this short time, and I'm actually cheating because I think this literally happened like 2 weeks ago, but I do think that it's a highlight experience of being on dating apps. And I guess I will just preface by saying I do think that we might end up in a phase of dating technology where there's dating apps and hookup apps. And I think that I actually spend more time on you're praising Jesus for that, for the invention of that.
Hookup Jesus, not dating Jesus, actually.
Yeah.
I've changed my ways.
Me too as well. But I feel like actually on all honesty, I spend more time on hookup apps because the type of relationship that I'm seeking right now is not a long-term relationship. I'm looking for like connections or like faster flings, if you will. And that typically happens faster on dating apps than it does on something like Tinder and Hinge, where I feel like the pretext of those encounters or those conversations is that you'll have a date or like have some sort of not immediately jumping into the sheets or whatever. Mm-hmm. Not that I wouldn't go on a date with someone from Grindr, but it's just like it also opens up that you can get there faster.
Yeah.
Or bypass that stage if you want to.
It's pretty easy, isn't it?
It's pretty easy when you're seeking the company of men.
Yeah, that was the implication. Audience, if you didn't know that.
Yeah. Men are easy and only want one thing, and they're all horrible. But we can't seem to quit. So my favorite memory, I'll tell you this. This is a fun way to like catch up with you about like my recent trip, and then also like tell you something that was kind of crazy. So I just went to Philadelphia for a conference, and while I was there, I was absolutely on the apps looking to meet people and see kind of the town. I think when I travel, I'm looking for a encounter with someone that is a little bit more than just like the busting and everything, like the getting down to business. I would like for them to tell me where their favorite place to eat is, or like what places I should go to, and like maybe we go like get a drink afterwards or before or whatever. Like that's kind of the vibe that I look for. But you know, I at some point desperation comes into play and things just look a little different. And so on this particular occasion, I had spent like the whole day on the app, which I think I should be embarrassed to say. Like spending a whole day on Sniffies is embarrassing. But I was looking for some fun.
I have those. Yeah. I wish I had them more, honestly.
Well, and I didn't really have anything else to do. I was doing some work, but I was also like seeing who was around. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being like, you know, a bunch of hours going by where like I'm doing my day, but also like checking in and seeing if anyone's messaging me. But then I'll like spend like a particular amount of time like looking for someone. And then this like situation like finally occurred where like, oh, I was like gonna meet up with someone. And so I had the address and I told my friend like where I was going, and we had shared each other's locations, and they were like, oh, you're going there? That's like, you should like make sure you get out of your car and go immediately in and everything. I was like, oh, okay. I don't really know what that means because I'm not from here, but like I will be safe and all of those things. But I got to the place and I'm like calling the number. Like he gives me a call box number so that like he can buzz me in, and I'm calling it and it didn't answer twice. But the third time it finally does, and I'm like messaging on Sniffies like I'm here. And I walk in and it's like
stuff.
Yeah. I like walk in and there's like this truck that had like pulled in, but the garage was closed and they were like unloading alcohol. And so there was like a whole like 24 pack of like Modelo's there. But this was like clearly a business, like an establishment, but nobody was there. And it was also like lofts. And so I walked in and like nobody was in the truck and nobody was monitoring me taking one and helping myself. And so I did. And so then I go upstairs to like where his room number is or whatever. And there's like a sign on the door that is confusing me. And so I'm like, is it this one or is it a different one? I hear music like down the hall. And like he lets me in. And I walk in and it's like literally a like test kitchen, like I'm thinking, or I'm trying to describe like iCarly vibes, like where there's a loft and like a room and like an elevator that's in the room, but like there's like a whole there's like massive like products of like cane sugar and like a test kitchen and everything. But then on the other side, there's like this chill space where like a computer is and like couches and everything like that. There are some parts of this that I'm going to omit because it's really exposing. But we had a great time after that. And we like, I don't know, we just connected on like so many different ways. Obviously like sexually, but then like in, sharing a little bit about who I am. We're both entrepreneurs, like kind of hitting this like stride.
He better be an entrepreneur.
That's why he has the kitchen.
Yeah.
But we get to that point in the conversation where it's like, so what is all of this? Like, I literally don't understand. And he basically like makes hot sauce, is like his small business. And so he had like a bunch of pre-bottled like hot sauces, and like he made me a gift bag of all the hot sauces.
What'd you do with the hot sauces?
Oh, I put them in my suitcase and brought them back to Oklahoma. I'm honestly gonna link the hot sauce in this episode because this can be promo for him, and I'm not exposing him in any way. But it was a great time. Like, in all honesty, there was like an intense like emotional connection. There was a like, I wish we had more time like type of vibe. There was like our interest aligned in so many ways. Like, he's kind of like an occult artist, and so like when we finally turned on the lights in this studio, I was like, whoa, this is all your art? And he was like, yeah, this is like all the shit that I do. And I was like, that's crazy. And then he had like a pinball machine, and like we played pinball, and it's like, this is his office.
This dude's got some cool stuff.
It was like dope.
Really, I wish I could be like such a quirky, unique guy,
There's things that I'm omitting that I think I should, as to not dox him or anything.
We'll talk about him later.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think to kind of wrap up why this is like my favorite, it kind of had like all the highlights of what I look for in connections: spontaneity, intensity, and I think like just genuine people having a genuine connection, even if it's like a short amount of time. And like, I don't know, it just ended up being a really pleasurable, for multiple reasons, interaction. And so that's probably like my favorite memory that happened because of a dating app, which the app was Sniffies. So that's a pretty horny app, that one. That's for sure. I've had more. I feel like the memories I'll be describing are more cerebral. Yeah.
They're more like, I've had some pretty okay emotional connections. Never had a real winner from any of these damn apps, but
yeah. I could talk. I mean, this is one thing. Like, I met my last partner by super liking him on Tinder. So it's not my favorite memory because we're not dating anymore, but it is like something that I will say, like, dating apps like work in some ways, just depending on how you look at them and how you use them. So except now Tinder's like completely paywalled super likes, which I think is kind of bullshit.
Oh, and also the algorithm is gonna like probably fuck you if you don't.
Well, I'm just
as far as I can tell, at least that's my excuse.
I don't know. Tinder like kind of gives you the like. It basically tells you who likes you by like the notifications and everything. Plus, it begs you to come back every day. You can have a streak on Tinder now by how many days you swipe in a row. It's ridiculous.
That's the opposite of like, because Hinge, their entire philosophy is
like to delete the app to delete. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna pivot into maybe the darker side of this conversation. What's your worst memory related to a dating app?
Okay, I can't remember shit. Let's see.
You're not obligated to say that, by the way.
Roll credits. So, there is a memory that I think would qualify as the worst. But I'm gonna have to omit it.
That's okay.
For right now, unfortunately.
Skip to number 2.
Yeah, let's think about number 2. Let's see, just because Smalsa,
Oh, absolutely. These are all my travel stories.
Oh gosh. Okay, yeah. So I went over to a guy's place. I was hanging out with another guy, and we got the fire. We felt it. And so we made a really quick, was it Sniffies? It was, yeah, it was Sniffies. Like a very quick, like couple Sniffies thing, set ourselves up.
You put the sniff out there.
Put the sniff out. Our little schnozzes. And we were looking for a third guy. And so we found a guy, and
not hard to do. Not
older guy, which was great. You know, I got my kinks. And it worked out for both of us. Anyways, long story short, we went over there and we go in, and this dude had CRT TVs of old-timey porn playing everywhere.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking gay porn, straight porn, 70s through current. I'm literally saying about 50 of them.
Like TVs playing
TVs.
Oh, screens.
Screens. And they were all like...
What's CRT?
Old cathode ray tube. They're the old-timey box ones.
Oh,
with the
okay,
curved screens and stuff. Yeah. So that was what was going on. Pretty cool. He had a bit of a little love shack going, you know?
Mm-hmm. This is definitely a love shack.
And we sat down, like we even like took off our clothes, at least our bottoms, and then he handed me a one of them like guns. It was like, you know, and he was like, "You can mess around with that."
The Theraguns or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The brand. This is a plug, if you will, and
not sponsored.
So we were using that, and then everything was going great until maybe 10, 15 minutes in. He just started going off on some transphobic bullshit, and it was very like he didn't mean to. It was from a fetishized standpoint.
Absolutely,
I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And so there was one point where he was talking, and I was just like, I did the whole like, well, I think I'm gonna go, you know. And then the friend I was with, he came with me, and we went out, we left, and when we were in the car, and this friend is like gay.
Yeah,
he was like, I still would have done it, and I was like, what? I couldn't even get.
You can't fuck through your principles.
Yeah, I couldn't
basically.
do it. Yeah. And so that really stood out to me, that just an awful experience overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently the guy that we left did hit up the other guy later, and he was like, "You free," yada yada, like typical stuff. But.
Absolutely. Yeah. You see what sticks around. That does suck. And I think I have had that experience where like my morals almost and principles get compromised, like on the apps by people that like, I don't know. I've seen people say like, "Oh, I have like a race play thing or whatever," and it's like, God. What? Yeah, I feel like your memory of your worst time on a dating app is pretty bad, because it is that same moment where you're like, my morals are kind of like compromised and all those things, and I hate being confronted with the reality that people suck.
Right. And like I'm trying to indulge a fetish, and what's really being that he's like 60 at the time, and like I am like just confronted with the fact that this particular 60-year-old guy, like, he's misgendering them.
Yeah.
In the way that but like he wants to talk. And he's also talking about like surgery in such a cavalier way.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you know what I mean.
Well, and it's just one of those things where like I think you and I both have gender experiences that have led us to where we are now, that I think is like, you're more comfortable in your cisgender identity, and I'm kind of like in this weird place where I'm in this gender fluid place. I wouldn't even call it weird. I actually feel really confident in my gender, but it's a place where I don't really land in like the male category all the time or the female category all the time. And so for people that want to be so binary with their horrible, like, I don't know, just like, I guess just transphobia, it's confronting, and I don't always feel like I can speak to the like horribleness of their perspective, because I don't have the perspective of the person they're specifically I guess, like transgressing against, you know, like I'm not
That's a good
trans.
point, yeah.
So I'm not going to, I don't know if, I know I should defend my trans brothers and sisters and all trans people, but I don't, not to this man. Like this man doesn't deserve me doing this right now.
For me, it was more about like, and I hate to admit, because as much as I do care about like being, I was at a hookup.
Yeah,
And
time and place.
I frankly, I left because I recognized mechanically the shit wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And like I wasn't going to be able to.
Well, and that can
do
be the
it.
transphobia or any type of like weird moral principle can be the biggest boner killer.
And I want to contextualize about how the fact that it was a boner killer, I'm sort of falling on that sword in a sense that I do want to protect my trans friends and everything, but, and you know, to speak to probably as ally as you get, he wouldn't have, he didn't physically need to leave.
Yeah.
And I probably would have been in the same situation.
Yeah, I think that regardless of the situation that you guys were in, your goals were different. And it sounds to me like you made the right decision to deny that man the satisfaction of your body based on a principle. And that is allyship.
That's how I'll contextualize it and frame it from moving forward. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that I'm at this point in my life in a much better way to digest that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was hard for me to separate the mental from the physical. And everything was so deeply intertwined.
I think the older we get, it's going to be harder to do that too. Or maybe you feel differently.
I've got a duck curve going. If like, I'm pretty sure, you know, if that is the way that it happens.
If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck.
It fucks like a duck.
It fucks like a duck, exactly. Okay, well, I'm gonna kind of jump into my worst memory related to a dating app. There really is a laundry list of stories here, but I think for me, I'm going to go like really far back into my like time as a young gay person. So this was, I think I was 18, freshly 18, which is, you know, legally when you're supposed to be on those apps and everything. But in this particular case, I think it was like the summer after it was the summer of 2016, you know, the summer that everyone idealizes or, you know, romanticizes in a way. Life was so good.
It was before everything changed.
It was before the end times. But it was also the summer before I went to college. And so I actually was like kind of trying to see what was in Tulsa maybe before I like fully left and wasn't necessarily planning on coming back and everything. But I was like going on like proper dates with people. But it's kind of just like the way that I was engaging with Tinder at the time, which I think was like, you know, a new app in 2016. That was probably like the first or second year that thing had been out. And so I'm swiping. And at that time, I had fully conceptualized myself as a gay man. And so I was just swiping on other men. And I swiped on this guy and we made a plan in the text messages to go see a movie. And I guess I wonder if I wish that I had like the receipts to see who suggested this, but the movie we ended up going to see was Finding Dory, which is a horrible movie to go see. I haven't even
seen it.
Well, it's just like not a two gay guys meeting for the first time meet at Finding Dory. Like, it's not a good movie to do that.
You're gonna have to really contextualize that.
Well, like Finding Dory, if you've seen Finding Nemo, I think my concept of Finding Nemo is that my mom was obsessed with that movie. She went to see it like 15 times in the theaters when it came out. Because it just like, it was one of those like movies that I think she connected to her spirituality in some ways. And so she went to see it a bunch, blah, blah, blah. So I watched that movie constantly. And so, you know, 12 years later, the sequel finally comes out, and many people were hype, and Ellen DeGeneres is Dory and all these things. And it's like such a kid's movie. It's a Pixar movie. And so we go to this date, and I think when we like get out of the car and like are walking up and stuff, like I already can tell like our vibe of personalities like just clash.
Yeah, because I was going to interrupt and be like, is this the movie killed the vibe or a
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both, which is why this is particularly bad, I guess.
I want to know how bad it could possibly go.
Well, the biggest thing was like, one, we got horrible seats. we're like at the front of the movie looking up like this. And it's like a Pixar movie, so there's just bright. I don't know. I don't love sitting in the front row of any movie, but like in that movie in particular, I didn't want to sit in the front row because it's almost like if people are going to look at you in a movie theater, they're only able to look at the people that are in front of them. You're not really, you're not really looking behind you in a movie theater because the screen's forward. And so we're like at the front, and I don't know why, but this guy thought that movie that we were in, maybe because the first row was empty, and that's why he picked it. But he like made moves on me in the theater, and it was not the vibe. It was, I think I like ended up, politely shutting things down like on multiple occasions. And it made the rest, I'm just trying to watch the movie here, dude.
In front of people.
Like people would have literally looked at us, essentially. Like they probably would have, I don't know.
Had the really kind hotels, like movie staff, like they're probably 17 being like,
can you guys not hook up in this movie?
No, actually, like, you leave now, everyone else gets a voucher.
Exactly. It would absolutely be one of those situations. And so, I think the way that I think I shut it down like a couple of times and was like, we'll just do it afterwards. Or like, if you can wait, like we'll just.
If you can wait.
Literally like trying to be polite. Cause he was a little bit older than me. I was 18 and he was like, I think 21 or so. And like, I was already getting those like kids vibes that I was like not attracted to this person at all either. And so we go back, like we walk from the movie out to the car, and we go like, I think we're just talking, and then he tries to like go in for a kiss, and I don't know why I indulged him in a kiss because I was so uncomfortable, but I did because I was horny and 18 and wanted to kiss a boy.
The combinations.
Exactly.
Things, yeah.
I was like, I'm already here. And so we go to like start kissing, and like he's a horrible kisser. Like bad. Like I felt like he was.
Can you be like specific? Was he selfish?
He was like moving
creative?
like the fish do, like like just wet mouth, and I don't know. I like to think about myself as a pretty good kisser. I guess you could rate me. Am I a pretty good kisser?
Yeah, I mean we it feels like a give and a take.
That's the way that I kiss people. Is like you match the freak. Like that's just the way that it goes. But at that time, I might not have been the best, but I also wasn't. I wasn't the worst, but he was pretty bad. And so I think like the reason it's not just bad because like, oh, I was uncomfortable and like the timing and all those things. I think it kind of has like all the characteristics of what I would consider like most of my bad dating app stories happen is that like the person's personality was different in person versus online. That always shakes me up a little bit because
we should dissect that.
Well, absolutely. And then I think the second thing is that like the person doesn't know how to be a person in front of other people. Like,
okay, well, I mean, that's one thing. Like if you don't have social skills and you can't like, you can't interact. That's one thing. You can't have a conversation and you can't think of what to say next or whatever. But if you are presenting one or not, what's the right phrase? You can be a different person, I think, on the apps than you are in person, just because I think those are two different people. That's the way I justify it. Because it's
the idea of you and the concept and the like reality of you, I think, is who's like, that's the app version versus the in-person version.
Mm-hmm. And I'm confronted with these realities in like many ways because the podcast version of me is so different than the real me. But because there are ways that feel more artificial. But I tell you what, I prefer this guy to the guy that's texting you.
Yeah.
And I prefer the guy that's hanging out in Vitus to this guy in general. So
No, I mean, it's a very valid topic to have, and I think it's fun to think about, and I have to think about it a lot because I do meet people. I meet people first on the apps, and then I meet them in person. It's very rarely the other way around, and so I think about it constantly that the way that I speak in text is the way that I speak in real life, or I try to match that energy. I call it like consistent authenticity is something that I really want to try and do as a part of who I am. And there's some times where like it's lacking, you know, I am just like a little bit shorter with my responses or whatever, or like, but if you get it out of me, or like I get into a comfortability with you, you will get the same version of me every single time. Like the way I text is the way I talk. But there's a lot of people that I think conceptualize themselves online completely differently than how they do when they meet people in real life or in person and have those live interactions. For better, for worse.
Everything feels really different when you're actually confronted with it. I went to an improv class for the first time ever, like on accident too, like 2 days ago.
You invited me. How was it on accident?
Well, because I didn't realize it was a class. I thought it was an improv thing where there'd be a large group of people and then you could interact if you wanted to.
Okay.
It was a like AA type vibe where you were in a circle of people and everyone was a part of every game.
Okay.
And that was great. I felt like I did better than I did when I went out to try an improv thing with friends in college. And so maybe there's some sort of self-actualization there where I am getting closer to like what it means to be me. I mean, that's just one way to look at that. But I still just feel so out of water at all times. It's
interesting because like I think for what like I'm going to throw not throw our business out there, but like throw out our relationship for people to consider in some ways, because
no one has ever heard about that before.
You and I do have we spend the majority of our time in person having interactions with each other. Our texts are not as frequent. Not to say they're dry, but they're just not as frequent. I don't think that you and I build on our relationship via text message.
That's a good point, or a good perspective,
because it feels like, one, we have access to each other, so why would we be texting all the time?
Where you at?
Where are you? I know. I'm like, I always text you. I'm like, what are you doing? And we make the plan to go do that thing. That's really all the texts are. Or we'll like slightly catch up on the week and things like that if the hangout is going to be later on or whatever. But like, I see no difference in the way that you text versus the way that you are in real life. That's
probably a byproduct, if I had to justify it, of me being, because I used to play a big character over text, or I used to, when I did text, I did so deliberately because it was some sort of like, not a social experiment, but it was a social activity and now I'm not going to say that like I don't play any games or anything. I'm just not as interested in them. And if I do text, I don't need to text anymore to play my games because, you know, back then it was like my mom was like, you know, no, you can't go see anyone today. Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know, it's, so the only way I can interact with someone, and now I can just be like, well, let's hang out right
Want
now.
to play a game?
Yeah, if you want me to embarrass myself, I will come over.
Exactly. I will show up and do it in real life. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about the concept of like how people portray themselves on dating apps too. I think because like we're talking about like text and, you know, in-person interactions, but there's also this like layer of like, you know, how do you put yourself out there to be desired by other people? Mm-hmm. And that is something that I think everyone confronts differently, because you have to.
I'm not a capitalist, so I'm never selling myself. I'm sharing myself.
Exactly. Everyone can have access to me.
That's the socialist. I didn't think this was a fetish podcast, but.
Well, thank you, Drew, for talking to me about the dating apps and all of those things. We are going to make our final descent into our last segment of the podcast, where we really kind of dive into a broader memory topic, where I'd really love for you to talk about, you know, at this moment in time, if you were to just zoom out of your life, where do you think your biggest memory gaps are? You know, where you're 20, I'm going to dox you a little bit with age. You're 26. We're like the same age and are at very similar points in our lives. but obviously experience life completely different, have different backgrounds. Where do you see kind of like memory failing you more?
It was during my incredible alcoholism and drug binge that I did in college. So I mean, like when I turned, realistically, it was like 16. I became the guy who like hoovered everything, and I got fucked up as much as I could on anything I could access. And in college, that spiraled into like proper alcoholism. If we're being honest, I have smoked weed every day since I was probably 14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say,
So Gen Z of you.
but all that to say, I feel like I prevented myself from learning who I was for a lot of years because I was constantly running away from myself. And I did it through the like drugs, mostly alcohol, as like banal as it is. And I was not confronted with it until recently. And so there's a part of me that's stunted. I feel like I come at things from the perspective of a kid in a lot of ways, and especially situations that I would like to feel confident coming at as an adult. Things that have to do with like self-actualization and emotional realizations about who I am. And also just obviously being able to have a conversation with a random person.
Yeah.
Just being able to find a stranger at a bar, for example, put yourself on a peer-to-peer level conceptually before you start talking, and then talk. And then when they say something that you don't expect, like everything anyone ever says, you can respond in turn. That's really hard for me.
That's hard in general.
And I think it's because of the time I spent not being myself. And, you know, there's talking about like changing brain chemistry, everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, I just don't think I remember anything from like 21 to 24. Like, it's bad.
I remember you had really long hair.
Can you
And
do you mind forgetting?
I could forget, I'm sure. There was really, and that's only pictures and stuff. But I mean, first of all, I just want to say, like, I appreciate your honesty with that. I know that can be a tough topic, and you and I have had quite a few, I think, deep conversations about that in particular.
It was fun to pick my words.
Yeah. But I think there is, I mean, there's a lot in there that I think is, at least you have the perspective that you have now about it. You know, the example you brought up as being hard, like, I said what I said, like that's hard for everyone as an empathetic moment, but also like I understand that it's harder for you because you feel like you haven't even approached like, I guess, attempting it or like ever feeling comfortable in that scenario. Well, and I do have some bit of comfortability in that scenario because I've experienced it and done it.
I think something that would be important for me to say, and I think it contextualizes a lot. I lost because of like the person I was and the choices I made back then. I lost what is probably the most meaningful connection I've ever made. And I think that was because I stopped being myself because I was not allowing myself to be myself. And I think things, you know, you talk about regret and stuff. I think that things could have gone a lot differently. And I've made a lot of progress in like realizing that that's not the way it is.
Yeah.
But it is hard not to feel like I haven't fucked something up deeply and profoundly and I'll never get it back.
Yeah. Well, and that's tough. I'm not gonna mince words with that one. It's a hard scenario to confront because I mean I try and live my life where I don't ever approach a thought that would make me feel like it's a regret. You know, like my coping mechanism is to say that I'm glad things happened I'm glad the way that things happened that way because I learned something. Mm-hmm. There's some situations that I think are harder to rationalize that line of thinking. And I think that it's okay to be where you're at. And I'm not trying to tell you to be any different, but I do think that I have confidence in you as a person, that you will make a more meaningful connection that will be longer lasting and honestly more fulfilling. So
I think I need to interface with my memory more, because
Yeah.
even just dredging something up like that in a platform like this it's nice. I'm glad that it feels nice.
Good. I'm glad. Well, I will just share mine really quickly. I think for me, this is my answer almost like every time, but like childhood is one of those things that I feel like I forget constantly. Every day I continue to forget things in my childhood. I'm on the app Blue Sky right now, and
the newest left wing app.
Exactly. There's no conservatives on Blue Sky. Don't come to Blue Sky if you're conservative. But on Blue Sky, there's been like their algorithm's weird, but they're showing like PlayStation 5 just released like a controller that is like an anniversary collection that is modeled exactly like the PlayStation 1 color scheme wise. And like, I can't even name a single freaking PlayStation 1 game. And I had one. I played games on my PlayStation constantly. I can't name a single one right now.
I hate being born in 98. I don't fit in with anyone.
We're just so at the cusp of so many things. I mean, like, the only thing that I do think like childhood is like my biggest gap, but I think the thing that marks a lot of my childhood memories is video games. And so I go to like, I always tell the story like, oh, I have a picture. There's a picture of me, a Polaroid picture of me playing Mega Man at age 2, which is probably, that could be one of those memories that's changed over time. And like, because I keep saying it, that's how I remember it. It's not actually how it happened. But I swear to God, I was playing video games. I was born with the controller in my hand. Like, that's kind of how it felt, because I did play games constantly. And video games and music, I think, just really mark like ages and like eras, if you will, in my life. And so it's always interesting to be confronted with nostalgia for video games, because I'm like, oh my God, I remember exactly what I was feeling or doing at that age because of the video game that I was living, the world that I was living in at that time.
I feel like the video game moment for me happened when I was at like 9 to 13. And then the music moment was identically as sensory as important, but it was like more like 13 to 15.
No,
17,
I think that timeline
like,
absolutely aligns with mine. It was, but I think I had earlier video game memories because I literally like had a Game Boy Advance, like a Game Boy SD. I remember on the Game Boy Advance, there was no backlight. So we were like driving, from like my parents' or my family's like house in Stillwell, Oklahoma, from Stillwell to Tahlequah, and no backlight. And so we'd want to turn on the truck light. And every time we turned on the truck light, my dad would get so freaking pissed that the light was on, because at that time, that was when parents were telling kids that having the light on in the truck was illegal. And he got so mad, like he one time like pulled over and beat our asses because we had we wanted to play Pokemon
the parents were all conspiring. Like somehow, you know how the kids all knew the like nursery rhyme joke things about like, you know, jingle bells, Batman smells,
yeah,
all
Robin
that shit. Somehow parents all knew the same way to bullshit their kids.
Oh, absolutely. And weird. I will learn that stuff too when I go down that path. But yeah, I mean, childhood is just, it's one of those things that I wish I could do some cognitive behavioral therapy to like really dive into my subconscious and get more connected with like my inner child so that I could like access those memories. But I think that I'm going to do that in a healthy way when it's time. And that, yeah, fingers crossed, of course. So that's kind of my biggest memory gap. And I'll probably say that on future episodes, but it is just one I constantly remember that I don't remember. Well, Drew, we are at the end of the episode. Is there anything else you want to share about what we talked about, or about memory, or any final thoughts?
Listen to your parents, kids. Eat your vegetables. And honestly, cherish. When I was younger, I thought that I could waste those years because I was younger, and you're able to, and you can be serious in your later years. I was struck I'm still a college student, grad student, and PhD student, so I'm 26. But I went and visited Norman recently, and I realized I wasted all my UT years. That's where I did my undergrad. I didn't ever go to campus. I just stayed in my room and forgot things. Please don't do that. Every single memory you make is important, and you might just have to dredge them up on a podcast.
Oh, that's sweet. I appreciate that. Well, yeah, and I mean, just thank you for your honesty and for vulnerability and for attempting to dredge things up. I think we have a relationship where this is a comfortable place to do so, and obviously, I think
You
you've
really
heard that
loosened
too.
me up.
Good. I'm glad. But yeah, this topic was interesting to dive into, and I enjoyed doing it with you. So thank you so much.